Hey guys, I'm going to show you today how to make some slow cooker yogurt. When we first moved over here to New Zealand, we didn't have a lot of our kitchen gear or any of it yet. And I went out and bought this slow cooker and wondered, oh, can I make yogurt in it? And so that's what I've been doing the last couple of weeks, is experimenting with making yogurt in the slow cooker, and I think I may have perfected it. It really is a slow man, the lazy man's way of making yogurt. You don't need to stand there and stir anything. You don't need to keep an eye on timings. If you forget about it, you haven't ruined it. It's really is quite a fail-safe way of making yogurt. So making yogurt is broken down into basically 3 steps. Your first step is heating the milk. Heating the milk is not so much about killing off any bacteria. A lot of that is done in the pasteurization process. It's more so about removing the, evaporating some of the liquid, the moisture in the milk, so that the yogurt becomes a lot more creamier at the end of the process. The second step is about cooling the milk down to a temperature where the yogurt culture can actually live. And you really want to keep that temperature around the 30 to 40 degree mark. Above that temperature, so around the 50 degree mark, you'll actually kill the culture. Around the 45 degree mark, the yogurt will actually start to split and it's not pleasant. Still edible, it's not pleasant though. So around the 30 to 40 degree mark, the yogurt will continue to, the culture will continue to thrive and multiply and do its job. Once you sort of start heading below those temperatures, the culture will start to go to sleep. You won't kill it. You can still revive it if you bring the milk back up to temperature. But you kind of want to keep it in that range. And then the third step is when you add the culture. Once you've got it to that temperature, you add the culture, stir it through and leave it. Don't touch it. Leave it be. Good 24 hours. You can take it off earlier than that, but I like to leave it for 24 hours and then she's ready. While you're leaving your milk to sit in the heating up process, you don't need to stir it. As you're bringing it up to that 90 degrees in your slow cooker, you don't need to stir it because it's a slow cooker. It's a nice gentle heat. It won't really burn it won't burn anywhere. You might get a little bit of milk catching around the edges, but just leave it. It's okay. You might get a bit of skin on the top. That's fine. Don't worry about it. It's all fine. It's quite an easy way to make yogurt. But the first thing you need to do is get to know your crock pot. So what we're going to do is put her on to low and put a meat thermometer on in. And we're going to leave it sit for a couple of hours and record the temperature of what she tends to sit at a low temperature. And then after a few hours, we'll move it up to high. Do the same, we'll write down the temperature that she sits at high, and then we'll put it on the keep warm function and record the temperature. And so that way we'll know where she tends to sit at and we're not going to waste any of our milk. So we'll come back in a couple of hours, have a look at what our crock pot is sitting at. And I would recommend you do this with your own crock pot because, you know, each one does its own thing. And yeah, we'll continue on from there. I'll see you soon. Okay, so here we are a few hours later with our slow cooker on low. And as you can see, it's sitting at 65 degrees, which is not hot enough to get our milk up to the temperature we need to evaporate off some of the liquid. And it's far too hot to allow our culture to do what it needs to do in order to create yogurt. So our low function is not going to do what we need it to do. So let's pop it up to high, leave it there for a few hours and see if we can get our slow cooker up to around the 90 mark. All right, I'll come back soon. Okay, so here we are again a couple of hours later. Sorry about the terrible lighting. But as you can see, it's about 92, 93 degrees. which is a great temperature for heating our milk. So I'm pretty happy with that. So what I'm going to do now is we'll set our thermometer, not our thermometer, we'll set our dial to keep warm overnight, and we will come back in the morning and see what our temperature is, and hopefully that will be sitting at a temperature which would keep our yogurt culture happy. Ideally we'd like it to be between 30 and 40 degrees, and yeah, we'll have a look in the morning. All right. Okay, here we are a few hours later on the keep warm function, and we're finding my crock pot is sitting at around 42 degrees Celsius. That's okay, it's a little on the warm side, but the culture will still continue to grow in the incubation period for our yogurt. Once you sort of hit around the mid-40s, the yogurt will start to split, and even though it's still edible, it's not a very nice texture. Once you hit around the 50-degree mark, the culture will die, so we're still very happy with that. So going through it all again, the low function on our crock pot is kind of useless. It's too cool for the milk to hit a point where we can evaporate off some of the liquid. It's also too warm for our yogurt cultures to incubate. The high function is a great temperature for us to bring the milk to the point to evaporate off some of the liquid. And the keep warm function is, it's a little on the warm side, but it's at still an ideal temperature for us to incubate the yogurt culture. So now the next step is to turn this off, empty it out, give it a clean, and we will pour in some milk. I'm going to pour in around 2 litres of milk, bring it up to our 90-degree mark for around an hour or so, and then we'll let it cool down. So we'll get that started and I'll come back and show you the process. Okay, here's our milk. I've put in around 2 litres. It took about an hour and a half to come up to temperature, up to around 90 degrees. I then put a timer on and let it sit for about just over an hour, and now I'm coming in to have a look at it. As you can see, there is a bit of a skin on top. I'm not going to worry about that too much for now. We'll deal with that later, and you can see that the milk has caught a little bit around the edges. I'm not too worried about that. There's no milk caught on the bottom, so there's been no burning anywhere else, and I'm really, really happy with it. So what we'll do now is we'll put the lid down, we'll put it on the keep warm function, and we'll let it cool down overnight. So then in the morning, the milk should be at the correct temperature for me to put in the yogurt culture, and then we'll let it sit for another 24 hours and we should have yogurt. So I'll show you the next stage in the morning when it's come to temperature. Okay, here we are again a few hours later. I actually had to turn the crock pot off for a couple of hours just to let it cool down a little bit. But we're down to just around 40 degrees now, so we'll turn it to keep warm. We'll put in around 2 tablespoons of yogurt culture from my old yogurt, from my previous batch I should say. So we'll just pop that in. We'll give that a stir through. I'll put the rest of that in a second when I've got my other hand free. We'll also just skim off that milk. You can always take that off later, but I'll just take that off now. Sorry, I can probably hear all the kids. We've got all the neighbourhood kids over playing outside at the moment. We'll give that a stir through. And now we'll just leave that sit for 24 hours. I will keep my thermometer in there and just check on that periodically, just to make sure it doesn't go above that 45-degree mark. We're trying to keep it around 40 or under, and we'll give it a go, see how it goes in the morning. Okay, here we are around 24 hours later. I did turn the crock pot on and off a couple of times just to maintain that temperature in between the 30 to 40 degree mark. I was home, so that wasn't really an issue. Let's have a look at how she looks. We've got a nice thick curd. It looks quite good. Let's have a taste. Yum. She looks good. Tastes good. All right, I'm going to transfer this yogurt into this lovely jar and we'll show you the finished product. Be back in a minute. And here is 2 litres of slow cooker yogurt. It is still a little bit runny. It should thicken up as it cools down in the fridge. If it's still a little bit too runny for your liking, you can always strain it through a cheesecloth and keep that whey that's left over. You can always put that into smoothies or into, if you're doing any baking or anything like that, in place of milk. My next experiment, which will be in a separate video, is to actually do the incubation stage in jars that will fit into my slow cooker, but that will be in a separate video in the future. All right, I'd love to see your feedback on this. Let me know if you try it, and if you have any questions, pop them in the comments below and I will answer them as I see them. All right, thank you very much. Let me know how you go.